prevent it from working at all!
Revolution Radio.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, where it's 53 degrees, and I've got Joe Anunnaki on the phone. Hey, Joe, what would you like to hear?
We are observing your Earth.
I'm sorry, Joe, but we can't...
And we'd like to make...
sorry, Joe, but...
a contact with you.
Collision course.
It is essential for our survival to use these powerful tools in the most humane and wise way. And the only way to guarantee that is not to shuffle the responsibility off to somebody else, but to make sure that every citizen understands science and technology to some extent.
Lighten up, Francis.
Good evening, everyone. It is Francis, and this is Collision Course. Tonight's show, I'm going to fill up with as much information as I can. I'll try to talk about what we've been talking about in the chat room. I believe I'm going to have my friend Suspicious Observers come on to do his update. Let's treat ourselves to some quality information. Beginning with, this is what I got to do. I think I've got Suspicious Observers on the phone. Suspicious Observers, are you there?
I'm here.
Are you ready to give us your update?
Sure thing.
Okay, why don't you let it rip?
All right, well, the Fukushima nightmare continued to deepen this week. 90,000 pounds of radioactive water leaked into the Pacific. Perhaps not the first time. The Chinese are reporting there's hundreds of square miles area of radioactive water out there. And we had volcano eruptions in Japan, Myanmar, and multiple other areas in southern Asia. Northern Europe was hit with extreme weather this week with winds in excess of 150 miles per hour, and there's a fair bit of damage. The Caribbean plate region has continued to see earthquake swarms in the Virgin Islands, multiple volcanoes, 2 landslides, and larger quakes throughout the region, and even extending along the subduction zone all the way from Baja, Mexico, down to Chile. Now, in the United States, we had moderate quakes today in Colorado and western Texas, and the year of weird weather continued this week with record snow and cold temperatures in some areas. All 50 states have broken weather records this year. Over 1,000 record temperatures and rainfall, more than 500 for snowfall already, not to mention that tornadoes and fire and flooding records that were broken as well. You guys ready for winter? Now, the road to World War III and financial collapse continues. Now, forget the failed bond buy and the fact that the debt deal the Europeans struck this morning involves paying for debt with more debt and does not have the support of Britain. Now, if they ever decide to fix their debt addiction, their people will probably riot worse than we've already seen. There really is no solution. Now, the Americans committed an act of war this week when they sent a drone into Iran. Their appeal to the UN will probably go unheeded. Maybe they will take the route of Pakistan and give us the silent treatment while blowing up NATO convoys like they did today. And why not? China and Russia have their back in every way. Now, for all the dangers we have here with our changing Earth and from ourselves, there is yet another danger on the horizon, and you watch her shine down on us every day. The sun's month or so of inactivity is waning, and the active regions are becoming more magnetically complex. In addition to increased risk from solar flares and coronal mass ejections, we are seeing a startling number of magnetic filaments. These plasma clouds suspended above the surface by magnetic forces tend to eject similarly to coronal mass ejections. In NASA news, this week we also learned that pole shifts happen a lot more often than even the craziest among us had guessed. And yes, the much anticipated weakening of our magnetic shields will accompany such an event when it occurs. On a more specific note, something fairly important is going to happen 6 days from now. Around dinner time in the United States next Thursday, Comet Lovejoy, C-2011, W3, is going to hit the sun. It isn't like these dozens of other sun-diving comets this year which weren't seen until they appeared on Soho Lasco. This one is big enough to be spotted weeks in advance. Now, if your eyes are open, you know that each time one of these comets hits the sun or even comes close, coronal mass ejections tend to follow in stride. And most of us have never seen a comet this size hit the sun. Now, I wouldn't start worrying yet. Our magnetosphere took advantage of the sun's month off and showed a lot of signs of repair. But obviously, the cumulative effect is something, always something to watch for, in addition to a potential catastrophic one-time event. Now, for more on the Earth, World War III, the sun, and using the scientific tools at HARP to understand the Earth-Sun connection, you can visit us on YouTube at Suspicious Observers. Francis, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Tell me about the sunspot. Tell us about what you're seeing in the sunspot activity, and give us a little more insight about what you're expecting from the Lovejoy comet.
Oh, well, first of all, in the first part with the sunspot activity, we're seeing a lot of times more complex regions. When we had some X flares earlier in this fall and this summer, they tended to be from beta gamma or beta gamma delta solar active regions, but the sun itself wasn't peppered with sunspots like it is now. And each sunspot is a location of high magnetism, essentially a point of connectivity for these loops that you see if you look at some of the SDO AIA images and even some on the stereo. It's interesting. For the last month or so, we have seen a lot more of these magnetically complex regions, but the sun hasn't been very active along with it in terms of solar flares and coronal mass ejections. And there haven't really been too many directed at Earth, but we've seen a lot of ejections the last day and a half from regions that are just turning towards Earth now. Now, with this comet Lovejoy, I can't say for certain, anything's going to happen. It would be horribly overdramatic and borderline fear-mongering to say that this thing could be it and could cause the big one. But in addition to a catastrophic one-time event, there's a very serious cumulative effect that is going on. One of the things we talk about is the critical frequency in the F layer of the ionosphere. Now, that doesn't really have to make sense to you right now. All you have to know is that there is a cumulative effect that is taking place, and it's a combination of the sun ramping up much, much more than NOAA and NASA predicted, ESA, and the IPS as well. Nobody thought that this solar cycle was going to be this active. And so you can't really say that, this is going to be, the big one, but it's important because we have seen these sun-diving comets seeming to coincide with coronal mass ejections. It is what it is. You can just take a look at the SOHO LASCO footage. It's all right there for everyone to see. So I would say keep an eye out for that same thing. Keep an eye out for a big coronal mass ejection, and let's hope it's not pointed at Earth.
And by the looks of it, December 16th is next Friday, my friend.
Yeah, it looks on the JPL, if you go hour by hour, that its closest approach is right at the beginning of the 16th, which and I think that's universal time. So that'd be right around 7 or 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. So right around dinner time, maybe a little early for those on the West Coast.
Yeah, right around when collision course starts, and we'll be talking again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I want to thank you. I thank you very much for coming on and just giving us this.
Absolutely. Hey, have a great show, man.
Thank you very much, and you have a great weekend and a great evening, and thank you for coming on Collision Course. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, see ya.
All right, everyone, that's our Suspicious Observers update. I really like him, and I do actually share his short updates because he's been doing them 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and they're great because they're full of content. They don't drop very many suspicious conclusions. It is the science that if you are researching these sciences on your own, that you can actually gain some insight to. So always love having him on, and we're going to have him on as a regular guest. The Lovejoy Comet, which is dated to come closest to the sun on the 16th. I find that interesting because I just realized that it is going to be next week on Collision Course, and I don't know if I've ever said this before, but it seems like there's been a lot of important events that fall on whenever I have the show, and there's another one, Comet Lovejoy, come closest to the sun. Other examples would be Leonid Elenin's birthday was on during our show. There's a couple more, but I can't even remember them right now. But every time something important happens, it always seems to be on show day. So that's good for me and good for you. I wanted to do something. I wanted to go back. I'll tell you now that in this day and age, as we all know, how many of us are looking into the skies in what ways that we can. I wanted to take a look at an old observation of the sun, an old observation going back to September 1st, 1859, when Richard C. Carrington made his first observation of a solar flare. And the highlights of that event go like this. While engaged in the forenoon of Thursday, September 1st, in taking my customary observation of the forms and positions of the solar spots, an appearance was witnessed which I believe to be exceedingly rare. The image of the sun's disk was, as usual with me, projected onto a plate of glass coated with distemper of a pale straw color, and at a distance and under a power which presented a picture about 11 inches in diameter. I had secured diagrams of all the groups and detached spots and was engaged at the time in counting from the chronometer and recording the contacts of the spots with the cross wires used in the observation, when within the area of the great north group, the size of which I had previously excited great remark, 2 patches of intensely bright and white light broke out in the position indicated in a figure that you can't see. My first impression was that by some chance a ray of light had penetrated a hole in the screen attached to the object glass, for the brilliancy was fully equal to that of direct sunlight, but by at once interrupted the current observation and causing the image to move. I was unprepared witness of a very different affair. I therefore noted down the time of the chronometer, and seeing the outburst to be very rapidly on the increase, and being somewhat flurried by the surprise, I hastily ran to call someone to witness the exhibition with me, and on returning within 60 seconds was mortified to find that it was already much changed and enfeebled. Very shortly afterwards, the last trace was gone. In this lapse of 5 minutes, the 2 patches of light traversed a space of about 35,000 miles. What that is just the actual description from Richard Carrington of when the first solar flare was observed by an observer. In that description, it noted of his tools that he used for that time and how he made the observation. What would be important to note about his observation would be his history of observations in the past and his continued observations in the future. And this tends to lead me somewhere in the direction of, at that time there was only him, and there was someone else who witnessed that event at the same time, and they did concur upon the event. So at that time there was 2 witnesses to an event that regularly occurred on the sun, but was for the first time viewed through the tools that they used. I want to make a mention of the Phobos grunt mission. Scientists say the Russia's failed Mars moon probe worth a second try. As of last week's show, the EAS, the European Space Agency, had picked up a transmission or had gotten communication with the Russian-Chinese joint Phobos grunt failed Mars space mission, blah, blah, blah. But since then, they cut off trying to keep in contact with it because they were unable to communicate with it. I found an article about one of the scientists who has a scientific experiment on board. The part of the mission that he was involved with was the life science part of the mission, and what the life science mission was on the spacecraft there is a capsule which has life forms, and the part of the science mission was to send the object, the module with the space mission out to Phobos, get dirt, and bring it back. And when it would come back, this life sciences part would be with it. And what they were going to do is retrieve the life science pod, open it up, and see what happened to the specimens inside the life sciences portion of the mission. And this is an article, I'm going to read it to you, about what he says and why he thinks the failed Mars moon probe worth a second try. With a decision by European Space Agency to resume tracking Phobos grunt, which means they started tracking, stopped tracking, and are going to start again this week after calling off tracking last Friday, December 2nd. The story of this unpiloted spacecraft remains a cliffhanger. Last week, the probe was said to have shown signs of uncontrolled tumbling, yet reports in recent days suggest that its attitude control may now be working. This is similar to last week's report. Last week was the same thing about someone said it was tumbling, and then someone said it wasn't tumbling, and in this description they somehow give you the idea that, you know, maybe it was tumbling and then it fixed itself. I don't know the whole deal on that, but I'm going to go with the fact that somehow the attitude control may now be working. Even so, unless the mission can be made to accept commands to boost its orbit, the spacecraft will re-enter the atmosphere in early January. The craft will disintegrate as friction from the thin air of Earth's outer atmosphere ignites the 12 tons of fuel that was to propel it to Mars. As news of the pending failure of Russia's first attempt to reach the Red Planet since 1996 spreads globally, some are concerned that this will spell the end of Russian interplanetary exploration for years to come. Some statements out of Russia during the last weeks have placed the blame on engineers and scientists at the Russian Federal Space Agency, Roscosmos, while comments by various space experts allude to the problems at the agency without blaming the engineers themselves. So the engineers say it's not my fault, and then some third party says, I don't think it's the engineers' fault, I just think it's the system, you know, it's just the bureaucracy of the agency. It may sound like a grim state of affairs, particularly for those of us, like this gentleman who's speaking, involved with the mission's science payload, or for the Roscosmos and ESA controllers who have been struggling to get the probe to respond to commands, but there are some reasons to think that the Phobos Grunt mission will be remembered as a partial success. For one thing, Alexander Zakharov, the Grunt mission scientist who was instrumental in getting the Planetary Society's living interplanetary flight experiment onto the spacecraft, has suggested that the team would like to repeat the mission. The history of spaceflight, both at Roscosmos and NASA, is full of failures, leading to technical improvements and eventual success, which means they get it wrong one time and then maybe they'll get it right one of the following times. He's confident that officials at Roscosmos will listen to Dr. Zakharov and others echoing him. The program will go on, and someday soon, I predict a probe will land on the Martian moon Phobos, collect a sample, and return it to Earth. This article that I'm reading, I hope I don't miss it because I should give him credits, is on space.com, and it was written by David Warmflash, space.com contributor. So David Warmflash is writing this as if he's saying it. In addition to providing engineering experience upon which controllers can draw the next time, a failed mission might also produce some limited scientific results. Because of the way that Phobos Grunt is configured, it is possible that the vibrations and tumbling that will set in as the speeding craft begins interacting significantly with the mesospheric air will dislodge the vehicle's most famous component. What that's saying is this gentleman believes that when it starts breaking up, it's going to dislodge the vehicle's most famous component, the return capsule that was to carry a 200-gram sample from the Phobosian surface back to Earth, sparing it a fiery death. Should this happen, the capsule might make a survivable re-entry trajectory, miss the oceans, and come down on land, just as it was designed to do. So what I read out of that paragraph was, well, if this thing breaks up right, there's going to be pieces of it that were expected to make it through re-entry. Expected to make it through re-entry. The arm is part of the Grunt interplanetary module, the stage that was to set down on the tiny moon to collect the samples and also deliver an enormous suite of scientific instruments. At about $150 million, this instrument package is really the heart of the spacecraft's science payload, less famous than the same return capsule, but daunting in its capabilities. Designed to probe the structures of Phobos with lasers, well, this is all the part that's not coming down. Also included in the Grunt science payload are instruments of conducting geophysical studies on Phobos and celestial studies from its surface. Hope is not lost. It appears that Russia's Phobos sample return mission will not be successful at this time, though I hope that ESA's renewed communication efforts could still change Phobos Grunt ultimate prognosis. So in this man's opinion, there's still a chance. We still have a chance. But even if it does not work, all the ideas and designs for it are already in place, and another try can be made as soon as the next launch window to open to Mars opens 26 months from now. So in 26 months from now, the opening to launch to Mars occurs again. Meanwhile, should an empty grunt return capsule make its way back from space next month unharmed, the Life Biomodule could be opened. Designed to test the possibility that organisms and rocks ejected from Mars might survive a trip through space to see the early Earth, life was piggybacked on grunt so that the organisms packed inside would experience all the effects of spaceflight. While such effects include the radiation environment that exists beyond the Van Allen radiation belts that surround Earth, which Phobos grunt won't experience if it never leaves Earth orbit, the experiment could still have value. An undamaged Life Biomodule would constitute a 2-month biology experiment in low Earth orbit. Many such experiments have flown in low orbits during the last few decades, which is why they wanted an interplanetary mission. Even so, life contains 10 species, representing all 3 of Earth's domains of life. Some of the life species have never been flown in space before, plus there is a collection of mixed microorganisms in a soil sample from Israel's Negev Desert, a Russian experiment. So, all the way up to this one part, I was reading this article, all the way up to this one part, and I said, oh, well, that's just an empty thing, and they're going to get a little saucer-shaped thing down, and it'll be empty like it was. Well, no, it's not empty. It's got species. Life contains 10 species representing Earth's domains of life, and it's a Russian experiment. And so what they're saying is, if this piece flies off Phobos grunt, it's capable of making it through re-entry, and if it lands on Earth, and if they recover it, they can go and open it up, and the fact that it was up in Earth's lower atmosphere will give them some information because there's life forms in that module which have never been into space before. So, 2 things. When it comes down, in my opinion, it'll come down. In my opinion, so far, they've never really had great contact with the Phobos grunt's failed space mission, so obviously, in my opinion, it's going to come down. 2, some of the pieces on the failed space mission were meant to re-enter Earth's atmosphere. I don't see how, that it needs to fall apart from I suppose if Phobos grunt explodes somehow without outgassing the fuel, and if it somehow ignites and it blows up, then you might have a catastrophic explosion, which blows everything up. But if it separates from Phobos grunt during the tumbling of re-entry, it can land on Earth. You and I could find it. You and I could open it up and see what's inside, or you and I could find it and hand it off to whoever wants it. And I suppose what leaves you and I doing is wondering if that module was supposed to open up in some way, release these life forms onto Phobos, or if it was just this secure travel to Mars and come back deal and see what happens. Anyways, this gives me some foreknowledge that there are pieces of Phobos that will come down, that are intended to come down and not to burn up. This is Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. My show is Collision Course every Friday night from 8 to 10 p.m. in New York City. Okay, on to some different news. Yesterday was a tough day for me because even though you would think that Comet Elenin would not be on my radar, it was brought to my radar yesterday morning by 2 telephone calls that I received, both of which implored me to tell the truth about my pictures of Comet Elenin. The truth. They want the truth. Well, I'll tell you that up until this point, and even to this day, though I may have people like Richard Hoagland, who loves my pictures, and anyone else who might have observed the images I took on September 2nd of Comet Elenin, I'll tell you that as of this date still, the observations have not been confirmed, and I'm going to tell you why. How an amateur astronomer like me can think that he's, going to get a result that he wants and find out many moons later, after some unsolicited telephone calls came to my office and poked me a little bit harder. Basically, the calls that I'm just full of, I'm just full of junk. That I haven't taken any pictures of anything, pulling everybody's leg. I should stop what I'm doing. Now, there's two ways to look at it. No, I looked at it two ways, and you can look at it whatever you want. Two ways you can look at it. I looked at it as, at first, I looked at it as if it was someone maybe from an opposing camp who just wanted to push my buttons and make me feel bad for the work that I'm doing, because I've had to somehow deal with that for forever, or since the beginning. And then I went to the second point of view is, is there a concerted effort to stop me from doing the shows and maybe, from doing the shows? Maybe these folks, I was thinking, maybe they were just coming on to try to really shake me up to see if I'm really a liar, that would I stop and would I run and hide. I'm not going to run and hide. I've got nothing to hide from. No reason to hide. I'm not going to hide. I've already promised that to you all. So even though I had a consideration yesterday morning that I needed to reanalyze my position, actually the conclusion I came to is all I have to do is get my pictures confirmed, and then I can be done with the Comet Elenin, are they or aren't they Comet Elenin images or not. Okay, so let's move on to where that put me. I sent the pictures. See, what you're supposed to do, what you do, or what astronomers do when they find objects, observe objects, find new objects, they have the International Astronomical Union to confirm, now I have to change that. I used to say to confirm images, but that's not exactly true. So, I had sent the images in with a request, based, an unknowledgeable amateur move to send the IAU over at Harvard an email with 5 images, and in the text body of the email, I would say, hey, I took these pictures on September 2nd. Let's put them in the observational chart and get them confirmed. So I sent it, I think I sent my first one like September 6th, which was 4 days after I took the pictures. And I got no reply. And as naive as this may be, I just thought, well, they're in there. They must have took them. They must have accepted them. They took my images, and I didn't get no reply. Okay, I remember again sending them in again, probably last month, a couple of weeks ago, because I remember I had the discussion with Cossack, and Cossack was telling me that my pictures, that's not Comet Elenin, there's no way it is, somebody's trying to fool me about my own pictures. And so I believe after that event, I sent the pictures in again. I said, I didn't get no reply. Let's try it again. Let's see if I can do a little research and do these differently. So I did a little research. I didn't really understand everything it was telling me. So basically, I sent in the same kind of information in the same way. Today, I didn't do it yesterday because I thought all day yesterday. I took 24 hours off to think about my position and what I was going to do. And so today I decided, let's go and find out what happened to my submissions of my pictures to the IAU. And so I sent in a request for help because I'm ready to get to the bottom of the September 2nd Comet Elenin pictures or no picture debate. I thought about, whether I was going to come online, what I was going to do. I almost convinced myself to take a break, but then I convinced myself out of it. And I can say that this is the first time I've been contacted by people I don't know already. Everyone I've contacted before, and I've been doing this now, basically putting myself online for this full year almost now. And anyone I contact have had contact with, especially by telephone, is somebody I already knew, or somebody that would be willing to tell me who they are and tell us what our connection was. It appears that, these two gentlemen really didn't want to tell me who they were, and they didn't want to tell me what our connection was. All they wanted to tell me is that I kind of need to either get the proof that they want or stop doing what I'm doing. So instead of delaying, stopping the show and stopping the whole process because of this hurdle, I'm going to move ahead. I do expect to hear back from at least one caller. One of the callers, the second caller, I just basically told him to go, I cursed him off the telephone, basically. So I went to IAU again, and I did what I should have done, or maybe what I should have done from the beginning is go to the help form and get some help. And it came back really fast. So I sent a message, and I told him in the message who I was. That I was an amateur astronomer, a little background about the images, what they were, and I said, it appears I need help submitting them because after 2 tries I have heard nothing in reply from the IAU. And I said, this is a request for help. Please help me. I'm easy to reach by telephone. Anybody can reach me. And an answer quickly was returned. And this is the state of my Comet Elenin September 2nd images. Gareth V. Williams, MS 18, 60 Garden Street, Cambridge, Mass. 120202138, USA. The Associate Director, Minor Planet Center. We don't process images. We deal with astrometry, positional measurements derived from images. Since you did not submit any astrometry in the required format, you would not have received any automated feedback from us. You should contact the Global Retinoscope for help in measuring your images. So I have my answer. I have an answer why my submissions have gone unanswered. And I have an answer I have information for you all that if you take the steps to do some of the things I've done in the past, we are going to learn together how to get the astrometry from my images so that these images can be submitted and they can be confirmed. And once that happens, the 2 callers who called me yesterday morning, if they call back, I will have a better reply for them, one that hopefully they will accept, or I will curse them off the phone again. And please don't call me unannounced. It really felt like a harassment, and it wasn't cool. So Francis is going to get his September 2nd Comet Elenin pictures verified after he completes the astrometry. I also, after I got that email, I contacted YouTube user TBar1984, and I sent in a request for him to help me, because what the astrometry involves, and I haven't done it yet. I haven't contacted Pete over at Global Retinoscope, because I want to find out actually what's involved in getting the astrometry. I don't want to call the Global Retinoscope support help and then just dump a huge amount of work on him, because that's not very respectful at all. I don't want him to have to do the work for me. If I find out through my research that it's not that hard to do by someone who knows how to do it, then I'm going to ask for their assistance. But we'll know by next week I plan on by next week's show to have resubmitted the astrometry for the images of Comet Elenin taken on September 2nd so that we can get them confirmed. And then nobody has any reasons to doubt me. And when I say I know what's on those pictures, we can lead them somewhere else than just my opinion to where they are. All right. This is Collision Course. I'm going to accept callers. If you want to call, if you want to join the call, have any questions, feel free. I'm going to try to deal with the callers in the best way I know how, which is when you call, I will answer and add you to the conversation, and then I'll try not to hang up on you and hang up on the radio station server at the same time. Much of tonight's show, as we've already heard, has been basic astronomy information from the week. We all know that there isn't a lot of objects that are posing a direct threat to Earth as there were so many months ago. If we even take the heavy mass object off the top shelf and put it down a little ways and do more research on it, there still are limited, exciting things to talk about. And, I have a caller, so I'm going to add a caller. Okay, let's answer the call. Let's see if this is TBar. TBar, caller 813. Are you there?
I'm here.
How are you? This is Francis.
This is TBar.
TBar, how are you, sir?
Oh, pretty good.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, I figured I'd call in before the show got over. It took me a little while to look at your photos and track down the stars because, like I said, I was looking at the Minor Planet Center position, and it was off to your picture, and I had to scroll off to the side to find your stars and look at it. And
what the heck am I looking at then? Oh God, this is just.
I don't know.
This is going to put more fuel on the fire, isn't it?
I guess, but both the Minor Planet Center position and the JPL Horizons position puts it in the same place, and that's off your picture to the left and the bottom.
Oh, my goodness.
So I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Okay, but could you give me the name of a star that's in my image? And could you help me out with that?
Yeah, I posted it already. The bottom star, the brightest bottom star you're looking at is TYC 4954-449-1. That's the brightest star down at the bottom center. And then there's a little group of 4 just up to the left of that. And the center of your image, that's what really allowed me to find it. I looked at the printout and saw where they were centering the camera. The center of the picture is actually around star USNO J1237-029-045347. That's the center of your image. And when I centered up this screen on that, I saw the other stars. The other stars popped right out at me. But I had a hard time finding it because I wasn't looking at where your image is. I was looking at where the Minor Planet Center had it, and that's off your image.
But there's, well, whatever. I'm going to have to, there's something in those pictures, TBar.
Yeah, I see it. It's something fuzzy there. Two fuzzy objects, really.
Well, listen. What I'm going to do then, what I'm going to have to do is I have to get astrometry on these images, and I'm going to make the submissions, and then we're going to find out. Maybe we should have already known already, but I guess I'm on because I received some weird phone calls yesterday, so I'm going to push the issue, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. And I guess this is a little bit of excitement. To me. For you telling me that it's way off course, I don't even know how to take that. I guess it makes it more interesting. If you were to come on and said, hey, that's it, then that wouldn't be as exciting as, hey, that's not it.
Well, I looked it up. Local time, 6:50 p.m. on 9/2, and Starry Night has it over there right where they centered the image. It has the star listed, and the position's not there that JPL and Minor Planet Center are giving, and they're giving the same position.
My object is not a star, right?
It doesn't look like it. It could be. You never know.
Yeah, well, no.
But there is a star right about there.
Well, you can see the other stars, though, because it was a 300-second exposure. All the other stars are elongated, and all these objects are kind of, the objects I have are kind of pinpoint. They're not elongated at all. So it was moving, and it's doing something, and I guess I'm going to do more work. But, hey, listen, I thank you so much for doing that. I know you don't have to do that, and that was really just out of the blue for me to ask you to do that. But that helps me because I have the hardest time doing what you do because you're better equipped at it than I am, so I really appreciate your help.
All right, well, like I say, it possibly could be a star. There's another star right next to it that's a little elongated, and that's USNO J1236-242-0454343. That's just to the right of the fuzzy object that's centered. And the fuzzy object that's centered looks like to be that other star that I told you the camera was centered on.
All right. Well, for all the listeners and for you and for myself, when I get the astrometry, which means is the measurements, the IAU wants the astrometry, and if I submit the astrometry, they're going to tell me what's going on. So that's because I wish I had a scientist who was following me who could just take these things off my hands, but amateurs like us aren't that lucky, are we?
No. I remember one of the questions on a test I had in Astronomy 101 was Higgs board was big back then. One of the questions was, please explain why there is no dark side of the moon. And it's just like the other caller talked about, as the moon orbits around the Earth, the back side is lit by the sun. When we see a new moon, the other side is lit fully, so there is no dark side.
Hey, TBar, my show's over, my friend. I'm sorry. I thank you for calling. Everyone, have a great night. Francis, the end of the course.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Bye.
Welcome to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are a user-supported website. What does that mean to you? We are not funded by the corporate machine. We will always strive to give you the truth, always give you an opportunity to respond, rebut, contribute. I'd like to ask you all to visit our homepage, see all the things that are there. Your donations not only fund the radio station, but they keep alive the website, which supplies you with archives, a forum, a great library where you can download documents. There's a survival store. You can learn how to build a tribe, learn how to home camp, how to build a bug-out bag. There's a survivor blog. There are links to weather, news, space information, government documents, the seismic activity that's going on in the globe, air and water information, news about our Earth in general, whether it be the magnetosphere or the radiation, links all over the place, all over the world, HARP information, T-shirts and stuff. The swag store is a wonderful place just to get a little memento. Make sure that you're with us in the chat rooms as well, and you have your choice of Java or
Sun, and using the scientific tools at HARP to understand the Earth-Sun connection. You can visit us on YouTube at Suspicious Observers. Francis, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Tell me about the sunspot. Tell us about what you're seeing in the sunspot activity, and give us a little more insight about what you're expecting from the Lovejoy comet.
Oh, well, first of all, in the first part with the sunspot activity, we're seeing a lot of times more complex regions. When we had some X flares earlier in this fall and this summer, they tended to be from beta gamma or beta gamma delta solar active regions, but the sun itself wasn't peppered with sunspots like it is now. And each sunspot is a location of high magnetism, essentially a point of connectivity for these loops that you can see if you look at some of the SDO AIA images and even some on the stereo. It's interesting. For the last month or so, we have seen a lot more of these magnetically complex regions, but the sun hasn't been very active along with it in terms of solar flares and coronal mass ejections, and there haven't really been too many direct
Revolution Radio.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, where it's 53 degrees, and I've got Joe Anunnaki on the phone. Hey, Joe, what would you like to hear?
We are observing your Earth.
I'm sorry, Joe, but we can't...
And we'd like to make...
sorry, Joe, but...
my contact with you.
Collision course.
It is essential for our survival to use these powerful tools in the most humane and wise way. And the only way to guarantee that is not to shuffle the responsibility off to somebody else, but to make sure that every citizen understands science and technology to some extent.
Now, in the United States, we had moderate quakes today in Colorado and western Texas, and the year of weird weather continued this week with record snow and cold temperatures in some areas. All 50 states have broken weather records this year, over 1,000 record temperatures and rainfall, more than 500 for snowfall already, not to mention that tornadoes and fire and flooding records that were broken as well. You guys ready for winter? Now, the road to World War III and financial collapse continues. Now, forget the failed bond buy and the fact that the debt deal the Europeans struck this morning involves paying for debt with more debt and does not have the support of Britain. Now, if they ever decide to fix their debt addiction, their people will probably riot worse than we've already seen. There really is no solution. Now, the Americans committed an act of war this week when they sent a drone into Iran. Their appeal to the UN will probably go unheeded. Maybe they will take the route of Pakistan and give us the silent treatment while blowing up NATO convoys like they did today. And why not? China and Russia have their back in every way. Now, for all the dangers we have here with our changing Earth and from ourselves, there is yet another danger on the horizon, and you watch her shine down on us every day. The sun's month or so of inactivity is waning, and the active regions are becoming more magnetically complex. In addition to increased risk from solar flares and coronal mass ejections, we are seeing a startling number of magnetic filaments. These plasma clouds suspended above the surface by magnetic forces tend to eject similarly to coronal mass ejections. In NASA news, this week we also learned that pole shifts happen a lot more often than even the craziest among us had guessed. And yes, the much anticipated weakening of our magnetic shields will accompany such an event when it occurs. On a more specific note, something fairly important is going to happen 6 days from now. Around dinner time in the United States next Thursday, Comet Lovejoy, C-2011, W3, is going to hit the sun. It isn't like these dozens of other sun-diving comets this year which weren't seen until they appeared on Soho Lasco. This one is big enough to be spotted weeks in advance. Now, if your eyes are open, you know that each time one of these comets hits the sun or even comes close, coronal mass ejections tend to follow in stride. And most of us have never seen a comet this size hit the sun. Now, I wouldn't start worrying yet. Our magnetosphere took advantage of the sun's month off and showed a lot of signs of repair. But obviously, the cumulative effect is something, always something to watch for, in addition to a potential catastrophic one-time event. Now, for more on the Earth, World War III, this is Francis.
Good evening, everyone. It is Francis, and this is Collision Course. Tonight's show, I'm going to fill up with as much information as I can. I'll try to talk about what we've been talking about in the chat room. I believe I'm going to have my friend Suspicious Observers come on to do his update. Let's treat ourselves to some quality information. Beginning with, that's what I got to do. I think I've got Suspicious Observers on the phone. Suspicious Observers, are you there?
I'm here.
Are you ready to give us your update?
Sure thing.
Okay, why don't you let it rip?
All right, well, the Fukushima nightmare continued to deepen this week. 90,000 pounds of radioactive water leaked into the Pacific. Perhaps not the first time. The Chinese are reporting there's hundreds of square miles area of radioactive water out there. And we had volcano eruptions in Japan, Myanmar, and multiple other areas in southern Asia. Northern Europe was hit with extreme weather this week with winds in excess of 150 miles per hour, and there's a fair bit of damage. The Caribbean Plate region has continued to see earthquake swarms in the Virgin Islands, multiple volcanoes, 2 landslides, and larger quakes throughout the region, and even extending along the subduction zone all the way from Baja, Mexico, down to Chile.